What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Marvel Snap balance patches that we see throughout the month, and we have our last one for the month of March. And we see a couple of nerfs to some high-end cards that definitely needed some taming. That's going to take down the meta, but opens up a conversation. And 3 buffs, 2 of which are okay, and 1 is awesome. And we've been waiting for this really since the release of the card. And we're going to start there. We've got Sauron going from a 3-4, which is obviously not a bad stat line, but the main problem with the card was that he was a 3-cost card. He's going down to a 2-2. It was almost 2 years ago, guys, that Sherry Sauron was like the best deck in the game by a far margin. Most competitive players were using it, and I definitely was as well. It was super simple to use and extremely lethal, but as time has moved on in Snap, things have changed, and obviously a lot of cards have been either nerfed in the package or have come out to just completely stomp on what was once a powerful deck. Then Starbrand came out and Hope rose. There was a new Hope in Starbrand, and he underdelivered. He definitely was not what we thought he was going to be, even though the archetype more of us were playing. We realized the core fundamental problem. And funny enough, to Alex, we were talking on the Snapchat, and I played a bunch of this Sherry deck with Starbrand when this came out, and I talked to him and I told him if they ever made Sauron a 2-2, that would be the missing ingredient in the deck. And surely enough, 2 weeks later, bam, here we go. We have a 2-2 Sauron that's going to drastically change the way the deck works. 2-2 is not a great stat line, but the way you want to, and the problem with Starbrand is that Sauron, because he works in cards for the hand and the deck, he was just awkward to play on 3. That was a much needed turn, and now on turn 2, which is not a needed turn, you know, outside of Lizard that can be played later, you now have ways to play Starbrand, Typhoid Mary, Red Skull on curve, which is massive in the way this deck is going to play. Is it enough to punch up to other decks? Can it stay competitive? That's what we're going to find out. It felt like it was getting on its way with Starbrand, and this should definitely help it a ton. They're experimenting with it. They're going to see if this works, but I, for one, am super pumped that Sherry Sauron's going to get its chance potentially in the meta again. Now, next up in the buff department, we have Ghost Rider going from a 4-4 to a 4-5. Now, I don't know about you guys, but Ghost Rider to me kind of always felt like one of those cards that I've wanted to play. I've wanted to make work in my decks going back to when Snap came out. And he just never felt like he belonged in a spot. And I don't think 4-5 is going to do that for him either. It might make him a bit more competitive to play, because on paper, what he does is really cool and dependable, especially because you can revive cards on the given location. This is one of those changes, though, that I think are neat. I just don't know if it's going to put him anywhere close to over the edge and really ramp up his play rate. But I do respect that they're starting to address the card, and hopefully I would like to see more risks with some of these cards that have almost, no to little play rate and really give them a chance to shine, in those decks. They want to be careful with this card. It's already had its reign with Hela for a long time in many metas, but this is a cool new direction that they could go. Last but not least, in the buff department, we have Pixie going from a 2-1 to a 2-2. So Pixie had like her day in the sun like once, I think, with like an Annihilus deck. And outside of that, she's been more of a niche and fun card. I'm actually surprised they're giving her any balance, because she's always belonged to this kind of fun land over competitive, play in Snap. It's a card that I like to go back to. I think she's actually, underutilized a ton and can have some real merit behind her. Talking about Snap conditions, one of the best in the game, at least at bluffing, but obviously very inconsistent at times. 2-1 is a stat line that's impossible to keep up with the likes of things like Iron Patriot and the new Sam Wilson, Captain America. So they're going to give her a PowerPoint and maybe encourage the archetype to get played a bit more. This is one of those that I think, draft. There's plenty of game modes that I think that she could excel in. Typical ladder, especially higher up, probably not so much. But this is at least encouraging us to dive back into those Pixie shells. And admittedly, I think a lot of us haven't played with her a ton lately. So we're going to see how that deck fares out, if we can come up with some spice for the archetype. Now, Iron Patriot is our first nerf card to talk about today, and he's going from a 2-3. As you guys know, on reveal, he'll add a random 4, 5, or 6 cost card to your hand, and if you're winning the location, it gives it -4 cost. They're now taking that down to -3 cost. Now, this is going to open up a bunch of conversation, but I want to start with, since this card came out, I've been at the top of the list of a believer of this being probably one of the best cards in the game, and it's fared as that, mainly because in a game that snap conditions hold so much value. He's got one of the best of them, and it's just an extremely good card that can work in any deck. I remember Alex on the Snapchat was asking me if I want this card over, whatever other card, and it was always Iron Patriot, because A, it fits my playstyle to the T. I love Agent Coulson in those style of decks, and so this has just been a fun card to play with, but it's just stupid good. And as a season pass card, we're seeing this and another one in a moment see a nerf, and that's, hold on to that topic for a second. So they're taking this down. I still think it's going to be a really good card. In fact, it's going to be able to fit in most decks. It's going to be completely fine with the change. Obviously you can't play 4-cost cards for free, and that's what they're trying to take away from. 6 costs are 3, 5 are 2 now, which are still plenty fine in the grand scheme of things. Obviously, the RNG kind of keeps this in check at times, having cards that you maybe don't want to play, but most of the time it ends up being something that's not bad, and oftentimes something that you can snap on. They doubled down. They said they love this card. They love the way that you need to win a location. It kind of just makes the interactivity within Snap that much more fun and interactiveness, but they do need to tame it down a bit because it was clear-cut just the best 2-cost card. I think we call them good cards. They called them value cards. Cards that you don't need other cards to rely on, just significantly being better than any other card. And we've seen that time after time, right? With Widow's Bot, whatever it might be, they tame things down if they're just getting a plug-and-play aspect to them, and Iron Patriot is taking that hit. Now, Galacta is the next card to talk about, and funny enough, we talked about this on the Snapchat about season pass cards, and I've always been on the side of I would rather them aim low for a season pass card because you know what you're getting. And then if they want to buff it like Gilgamesh, cool, you end up, getting a much better card than you thought, rather than what's happening here. And we've seen this happen now with Surtur and a lot of cards. And that's, we get season pass cards and then they end up getting nerfed. Now, they don't change the core identity of the card often outside of maybe Loki, but it's just something I don't love seeing a pattern on. And we're starting to see that continue on, and there's 2 in 1 patch here, because obviously whether this is their intention or not, which I'll leave that up to you guys, Sherlock Holmes, when you release a season pass card at the top of the game here and it's performing at an insanely high rate, that comes off to people as you're trying to sell the card because it's really good, and then after its time has passed, they end up nerfing the card, even if it's still good, to less good. And I think that that's just a pattern you don't want to see. I don't want to see. I think it's just not a good look in general, and it needs to change. We've had this topic on the Snapchat so many times because it's something that we care about deeply. I care about deeply. But Iron Patriot going down, he's still fine. He's still great. He's still gonna be plug and playable, and I think the best 2-cost cards still in the game even after this. But they are changing them, and on top of that, Galacta is changing from a 4/6 down to a 4/5. Galacta was one of those cards that also came out, and we were like, where's the downside, right? Like, she fits in just about everywhere. Gwenpool, pretty much non-existent after Galacta and what she brought to the game. And they're going to bring her down again because she was just a good value card, or a good card, as we've talked about before. And we've had good cards in Snap forever, and there's still good cards in the game. They said they don't want to always take good value cards and nerf them, but Galacta was showing up in too many decks, and they want her to be plenty competitive, but not everywhere within the game. Which, again, I agree with. I think it's good not to have all decks with 2 cards and you already make a 12, card deck game into a 10-card deck game. I agree with all this. It's just how they release and what that looks like that I think they need to fine-tune for sure. Galacta, though, definitely needed a little bit of love here, going down to a 4/5. Still going to be played fine in where she's at, but is going to go down a bit in overall value in the plug-and-play decks that she is in. And that's going to be it, guys. It's a short and sweet one as we head into the brand new season. We should get the trailer tomorrow, and who knows what that is going to have in store. So I'm excited to see what we've got going up in the next season, and we probably should have way more videos on this channel in terms of deck guides coming up here pretty soon. So I'm pretty pumped for it. Anyway, guys, have a good one. Have a great one. Till the next one, happy snapping.